This episode is brought to you by Pizza Odyssey. If you're in the Lakeland, Florida area and you're feeling maybe, hey, I'm a little hungry tonight, Pizza Odyssey is the place for you. Honestly, it's become one of my favorite pizza spots here in Lakeland lately, right around the Lake Morton area. They make their own dough, make their own sauce, everything there. It's incredible. You need to go over there, try it. You can get a regular slice or you could try one of their specialty pies. It's incredible. Make sure you head over there and let them know we sent you. Pizza Odyssey in Lakeland, Florida. On today's show, we have the owner and founder of Paige Wagner Homes. Come on, welcome to the show, Paige Wagner. Paige, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for doing this. Obviously, we had your husband Chase weeks ago. Now, what's crazy is like the show hasn't been around that long, but for me, I guess, just like it feels like a long time.
Yeah, you're pumping him out.
Yeah, I'm trying.
I'm trying.
It. Yeah.
I love it because it's so fun to be able to learn about different people in Lakeland that I wish I could. We all wish we could sit down with a ton of people, but reality, we can't. And so I love listening to this and this whole concept because I feel like I get to know my city more.
1,000%. That's the goal. That's
Super
cool that
cool.
you feel that way. Because I literally just before we recorded this, I recorded like a little thing that everybody will hear like for Thanksgiving.
Cool.
And I was like, this has kind of been the goal. Like Vic is, we get in these modes like where just naturally we kind of, face buried in the phone and we're, going through the motions of our day. But to like stop that and to like learn from somebody around us.
Totally.
There's a guy, which I think his episode will already be out, so I can say this, but a guy named David, he goes by Ja David.
Okay.
He's a reggae bass player.
So
he's
sick.
awesome. But this is the way I met him, was just like at Concord Coffee, little drop there for Concord Coffee. Love them. And like just talking to him about what he does and learned that he's like a 2-time Grammy nominated bass player.
Living in Lakeland.
And he just like stops by Concord and he's great at what he does. He's really cool.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, it makes the city feel smaller in a good way.
And it's good for me too, because it's like I'm kind of taking like a step out of comfort zones too, and like meeting people. Like, hey, I'd love to like. That's kind of the thing too. It's like you can obviously like we've had the mayor on the show, and that's a big responsibility. But even just like some people around town, like Ja David, like you wouldn't necessarily know, but
Totally.
like, oh yeah, he plays bass, but it's so much more than that, like his history and all that. So like from like big responsibility to like, a homie that's goes to the same coffee shop. I feel like it's cool.
Oh, it's the best. And you can unpack so much in an hour, which is great.
For sure. Which I'm glad that we'll be able to do that today with what you've done. And but first, you just got back from a trip, right?
Yes. So last month I went to France with my mom and her 2 best friends.
That's awesome.
So it was amazing. It was like me and the old ladies, but they were not old. They partied harder than me. They had the best time. Oh yes. They were just so classy. We ate at the best restaurants, had the best champagne, and it was just so lovely.
Were you in Paris, or did you travel around, or?
Yeah, so we went to Paris for the first 4 days, and then we went to Reims, but it's pronounced Reims.
That was great.
Thank you. I worked hard on that. It is the Champagne region of France.
Ooh, okay.
So I learned a lot about champagne. These ladies knew a lot. You can't call sparkling wine champagne unless it's from Champagne. So if you're having sparkling wine from California, it's called sparkling wine. But a lot of people just adopt the name champagne, but it has to be from Reims to be champagne.
I know that from a lot.
I'm impressed
less
you know
cool.
that. That's amazing.
I know that from a lot less cool reason. It's because I used to work for a Bonefish Grill and I had to sell wine a lot. But,
and you couldn't call it champagne.
But it was like, that was like a selling point for like kind of a high bottle. But but that is cool. I've always wanted to go. Like my grandma, who isn't biological, but someone we've always called my grandma. She was originally from, I think it's pronounced Mertz.
Okay.
But it's like right on the border, like France and Germany.
Very cool.
And I've always wanted to go out there. My mom and my sister have kind of met with her family and all that lives in Paris. Her nephew is a musician in Paris.
Oh, wow.
And I've always wanted to like get to know him a little bit more. I used to speak a little bit better than like I do now.
Do it. Try it.
Oh no, maybe by the end of this episode,
Perfect.
I'm like the end of this Celsius that I'm trying to drink right
There
now.
you go.
Maybe I'll
Fair,
gain more
fair.
confidence. But
Bonjour.
yeah, that's good.
That's
yeah,
it.
bonjour.
That's all
yeah.
I got. Yeah. No, Paris has a really cool energy to it.
Yeah.
A city. It's very magical. I think the Eiffel Tower, it's sparkling, twinkling every night, of course, just like sets the tone of the city being, very romantic and special and like sweet. But like culturally, art, shopping, just how
Yeah.
people look, how they act. We even did like a food tour and like trying all the different foods that they have and how they value, lunch, and they'll spend like the whole day to prepare a 2 p.m. lunch. Like lunch is everything.
Yeah.
And we even saw like where little kids go to school and they actually have cheese and crackers like every day for their snack, which makes sense because you're in France. But
Yeah.
they're having like, brie and all these like fancy
good
cheeses.
cheeses.
Yeah. And they're
Yeah.
4. They're having like better cheeses than we
That's
have.
crazy.
So it was a really cool experience. But yeah, Reims was awesome too because it's known for its chalk tunnels. So the whole city is actually built out of chalk.
Oh, wow.
So like how we have cinder blocks or, use like concrete slab, the city is built on chalk.
Wow.
And so every building you touch, it almost feels kind of like soft and muddy, like
Yeah.
chalk, but it's been there for like 300 years.
That's crazy.
So it's pretty, yeah.
So it'd like
it's-
come off on your hand too. Like,
yeah, a little bit. Like you'd have some residue on your hand. And then the tunnels where they mined the chalk, because I guess chalk is like in the ground that you mine.
yeah.
That's what, once they were done mining all the chalk in the late 1700s, that's when they realized these tunnels were perfect for making champagne.
Wow.
So anyway, so that's why Reims became known for champagne because it had like the perfect environment with these caves to make it.
That's so cool.
So yeah, it's just like really unique history.
Was the thing I've always seen too is like everybody in France can tell like if you're American almost by like the way you dress. I feel like that's been in shows or just even in like maybe I've seen that on TikTok or whatever. But
Totally.
like just everybody dresses so well there,
They
like
do.
almost every day.
They do. Like
Yeah.
from like 6 a.m. on, they just look so great.
So great.
But I don't know. I felt like the Parisians to us were, not that they wouldn't be kind, but they were very kind. Like, so I feel like back in the day, it used to be this thing that like maybe Paris wasn't as patient with Americans or they weren't as kind, but it was just, they were wonderful, great
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
And like, and the Olympics had just happened. So I was also like, are they going to be sick of all these tourists here? Like at this
Oh,
point,
yeah.
because we went in September, but it was great. We had
That's
a great
cool.
time.
Yeah,
It
I feel like
was.
that thing is always just like they want you to try, right? To try to speak their
yeah.
language.
Like you said, say
Yeah.
bonjour and smile a little bit, and then they're
And
fine.
you've won. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
you've won them over.
Yeah, I
Yes.
feel like that was what I always heard, especially from my grandmother too, was like just people coming over there and immediately speaking English to them, which everybody knows. It's
course.
crazy about like other countries too, right? They know like
yeah.
3 or 4 languages
Yes.
and
we know,
we know
one.
one. My son, like when he was first going to actually your sister's school, which is really cool, Alta
Yeah.
here in town. He had a teacher and he came home and this was when he was like 1 or maybe he was 2. He was 2, but and he was like, uno, dos, tres. He was counting in Spanish. I was like, whoa,
That's
how'd you do that?
amazing.
It's
Yeah.
sick. Yeah. But man, I was like, I hope he keeps up with that, dude. That's
Totally.
actually like a really great skill to have,
Yes,
you know?
for sure. Lakeland has a Spanish immersion school now. It's
Really?
actually a Montessori school. It's called Mi Escuela. So they literally just speak Spanish to like your 4-year-old all day. And eventually they'll catch on. Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
I know it's progressive
Yeah.
for Lakeland. It's great.
Very cool. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that would be, it's cool to see like, I think we've both have a friend who's done that before, like genuinely with their daughter, but like
Totally.
has like speak like one language and the other one speaks the other. And it's just crazy. Like your brain can pick that up as a
I know.
kid,
Yeah.
you know?
You're a sponge.
Yeah. Wow. Well, hey, I want to talk a little bit too about what you've done and what you've built here in Lakeland. Obviously with Paige Wagner Homes and everything that's come with that. Maybe let's start from the beginning. Like, how did you get started in like the real estate world, or how did you know this was something you wanted to do?
Yeah. So I've been in real estate now a little over 10 years.
Crazy.
So I've actually been reflecting on like the journey. So, just having that 10-year mark. And back up, Chase and I moved to Lakeland in January of 2012. So we've been here almost 13 years. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That's a long time. And Chase, we moved here because Chase was offered a job at Southeastern. And I was still a sophomore in college when we got married. So the gig was awesome because he got a job at a college where I could finish college for free because we were married. So when we moved here, Chase hit the ground with his career and I was just finishing school, and really halfway through college. So I did 2 years at Southeastern and then graduated and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. We moved here to work at Southeastern. And so that felt like the natural thing, work at the college that we moved our whole life here for. And door after door just kept closing. I applied for so many jobs and didn't get any jobs. And I was just at the end, I didn't know what else to do. I actually was working at Black and Brew. That was my first job in Lakeland. The downtown. Well, there was only a downtown.
That's right. Time. Yeah.
Yep. So
it's really grown since then.
Really grown. Yeah. There's like 3 going on 4 Black and Brews, which is amazing. So I worked downtown and then we had just bought a house. So it was 2013. You could buy a historic home in Lakeland that was beautiful for like $80,000. In 2013.
It's crazy.
I know.
Yeah. So it kind of makes me mad for like right now.
It makes me mad that we don't still own that house. Yeah. So we had just purchased our first home, a cute little Spanish casita, 1920s. Just you went to that house.
Yeah, I think so.
You've been to that when you were a student anyway. So I just bought a house. So in this kind of time of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, Chase, my husband, he said, hey, we just bought a house. You seem to really enjoy that process of, looking for homes, enjoying the design styles, even the administrative aspect of it. And I said, Chase, every girl loves doing that. That is not like a gift set of me. Like,
sure, yeah.
Every girl loves being on, even guys love being on Zillow and looking at homes and doing that. That is like not a testament of like my skill set. And it was really Chase. He was like, hey, no, I actually think you should look into this.
That's cool.
Which is really cool. I would have never thought of it.
What was the original goal? Like, just mind me asking, like.
The original goal. So I went to college. I got my degree in missions.
Yeah.
So ministerial studies with missions. And so I think being a missions director.
Yeah.
Or some sort of thing at Southeastern or over some sort of missions organization would have been what I wanted to do. I did a lot of missions in high school. My church was really involved in this one ministry in Haiti. So I went to Haiti like 4 times in high school.
Oh, same. I've been like 3 or 4 times.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yes. Cape Haitian or Port-au-Prince?
Port-au-Prince.
Port-au-Prince.
There's like this place like right when you get in there. Man, I don't remember the name of it, but my church was like connected with it. I think Hope's in the name or something like that. But it was, right in Port-au-Prince. Yeah.
Yeah. Haiti's a wild place.
No, for sure.
It's a crazy place. So, but anyways, that probably would have been the plan.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to do ministry. So real estate felt like, oh, this is like a sales job. Like this is not ministry. Like it almost felt like icky to me in a way. Like, I don't know. It didn't feel like it fit me.
Yeah.
But it's kind of my only option and all I had. So I went to real estate school kicking and screaming. I was not happy about it. I didn't tell anyone I was doing it. I was like, I just have to go in a direction and this is the only door that's open. And so went to real estate school. When I became a realtor, I was the youngest realtor in Polk County for my first 3 years as a realtor.
Wow.
So I became a realtor at 23. The average realtor is 52 age-wise. And so I just kind of felt out of place. I was like, I need to like pioneer something of my own within this industry. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if you just like had a map and said, this is what you're going to do?
Right.
But I just felt, I just kind of felt out of place. So I had to make my mark. And so I joined a company that no longer exists. It's called Olive Branch Realty, but loved my broker there. I did 4 years there, did really well. She trained me really well. And I just kind of hit this niche of young students coming out of Southeastern, graduating, getting good jobs, and being able to buy a house for $80,000. So I was like, guys, let's just stay in Lakeland, get a job, own a home. Life is great, So that was really my niche and kind of where I got going in the beginning.
That's so cool. And even kind of stepping back a little bit to like the college thing, because I feel like that is actually good for people to hear or to consider. Maybe if like you're college age or you're just in that position of life where you're like the original goal doesn't feel like what I should be stepping into or what's like the doors that are opening for me. Like when I first, before Southeastern, when I first like graduated high school, stepped out into college. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I like didn't have a ton of motivation, to be honest, coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And so I remember being at my dad's office post-graduation, going to a computer and searching highest paying jobs in America, like legitimately.
Hey, that's efficient.
Yeah, it was
That makes
efficient because
sense.
I was like, I just wanted to make some money and,
Yeah.
do well.
Work smart, not hard.
And there was a couple options that were just like mostly doctors, and I'm like kind of squeamish and all that, with blood. But
Yep.
one of the top ones was dentist, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna be a dentist.
Yeah.
And so I started like interning under a dentist,
Wow.
and like it was like a mild because we knew one, and so
Yeah.
like kind of watching him, shadowing him as he worked, and it was kind of super interesting now looking back on it. But like all that to say, like coming from there, going to the Southeastern, kind of focusing more on missions, and today of where I'm at, kind of more so like leaning into like the podcast and leadership and like stuff like that. Like it's cool to like from you too, being 10 years in, like to be able to look back and being like, oh, even though it didn't feel right, like thank God I went for it, right?
Totally, of course. And it's interesting how like it all circles back. Like the passions and the reasons why I wanted to do missions and ministry, I actually do feel like I'm fulfilling in real estate, which sounds like polar opposite, career paths and type of jobs. But people, when they're buying or selling a home, are always in like a very pivotal season in their life. So, they're either buying or selling for the good things. They're getting married and, they're having a child or another child, which is great. I get to play this, kind of intimate role in their life, but also in the hard times. I've had to sell homes for people when unfortunately family members pass away or they lose jobs or divorce, but I get to play this role in their life that is so unique. And I get to kind of step in and be this light in this transition and in this hard time. And I just feel very fulfilled, like I said, in those same passions of why I wanted to get into ministry in real estate.
Yeah, what's cool too, like even thinking about this, like with like Paige Wagner Homes, and like I feel like in maybe in Lakeland specifically, and I'm sure this happens like in other cities, there's like a couple of things that like really provoke and grow community. Like I feel like our church is one. I feel like obviously like maybe the university or some other, like there's this huge run club that meets in Lakeland that like runs by my house. But I feel like a testament to you two and what you've built is I feel like in a weird, maybe not even a weird way, but like what you've built also does that. Like I remember going through the home buying process with you, and you were like, oh, this person lives right here. And like you get to live, this is your neighbor. And like a lot of things maybe some other realtors wouldn't necessarily think about in like okay, let's just get this home sold or whatever. But for you, I do feel like it's been a really cool like experience. I don't know. Are there some things that like you feel like what you've brought to the table from your experiences and what you've brought into Paige Wagner Homes, like what kind of makes you unique? Is there some things that you feel like stand out for you guys?
Yeah, I think the community thing is huge. When you buy a home, yes, it's a financial investment and it's a good thing, but you are buying a piece of your city. And I really want people to understand that you are buying a piece of dirt, an airspace of your town. So know it and love it. Like don't like leave a mark on it. Like whether you're in that home for a year, 5 years, or 20 years, that's your space. That's your mark that you get to leave. And so, that's kind of the mantra I've always wanted to instill in people when they buy a home, that they're not just buying brick and mortar, but they're buying into that community and what they can do to make it better and play a role in it. So I don't like preach that to people when they buy a home, that's a requirement, but I think that's just how I operate. So I think that just kind of comes out.
For sure. And I don't know if everybody else feels this way, but like, I feel like with the homes we've owned or lived in or whatever, there's like a little bit of you that still lives. You know what I mean? Like every time I drive by it, I'm like, so like one, for instance, I think the first house you sold us in Lakeland, we lived in, that was the house we rode out 2020 in. And then we moved shortly after that in like late 20 or mid 2020. Either way, I drive by that house sometimes and it's like, really gone down, unfortunately.
I know.
You know what I'm talking about?
Too.
Yeah.
Yes,
and I'm like, oh my gosh, like for a while they had this like the sign. Do you know what I'm talking about? They had this weird
It was like
sign.
a Halloween sign they never took down.
Yeah, for like a year.
Yeah.
And like, I was like,
kind of went frat housey. I think it was like college kids living in it for a bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I accidentally got a package shipped there one time. And it was an interesting vibe because I went to the door and I was like, hey, I used to live here. Could I have this? And I kind of peeked on the inside and I was like, oh God, poor house. But anyways, it's like, yeah, you get like connected to this, and it's cool to have those like memories in your town. That's like, hey, like you're right. Like I own a little bit of this, you know?
Exactly.
Which is really cool. I like another thing too, like I mean, maybe this is part of like the uniqueness of you guys, or just something I noticed from you like early on, is just even the way that you guys present like Paige Wagner Homes, or like whether through social media or even just your signs, was like actually like appealing.
That's
you know,
awesome.
Like I feel like, I don't know, like do you, maybe you feel this way too, but like for a while it's like all the for sale signs were just kind of like bland. This is like every other one, but your guys is like feels like it stands out to me. Was that like intentional, or?
It was. Well, I just hate all for sale signs. They've gotten a lot better, but especially 10 years ago, it was just the color.
They all look the same.
Yeah. And everything was red and white. Because psychologically, like when you're driving, red is the color you think red to stop. So a red sign is going to draw your attention. So I understand that, but red is also super aggressive. And I feel like I was always trying to fight that reputation of a realtor of being almost like no offense to car salesmen, but the vibe of just being more pushy in sales and just getting it done kind of thing. So I really wanted a brand that was approachable and that was cool and fun. And I've always wanted to, when people come to buy or sell a home with me, I want them to learn so much, because a lot of buying and selling a home, it is so quick and you do have to trust your realtor, which is important. But I wanted to empower people to understand what they're doing. And so I probably overteach things that my clients are like, no, we're good. We'll just sign. We'll trust you. And I'm like, no, you have to understand this, because I want them to carry that, throughout their life, because it will not be the first home they buy or sell.
For sure. Well, you've helped us out so much. I know, like in the couple of homes that we've bought and sold and moved around and all that. Like I remember that our one home when we were selling it, you were like, you got to do something, like do like paint the back deck or something like that.
Yep.
And like you were right, like it definitely like
elevated. Yeah. That's probably one of my favorite things about my job is when I go to sell a home, and not a lot of people need to or want to put a lot of money into their home right before they sell.
Yeah.
But there are like 5 kind of things that just take it from here to there.
For sure.
And it's so fun for my sellers, because once they do them, when I tell them to do them, now they're like, I don't know if I want to sell anymore. And I'm always like, that's it. We did it. The minute you feel like as a seller, you no longer want to sell, or you're like, it's so pretty, I don't want to leave. Now we're ready to list. That's like the feeling.
I wish we wouldn't have sold our last home, for sure. Now that we're back and how crazy home prices are, but we'll get there.
But that's life.
But back to the sign thing, I just thought about this. It is crazy how like important it is, like psychologically in the home buying process. There's a house around like Hollingsworth right now, and I hate to like dox these people, but like there's a house around like Hollingsworth that's for sale. Maybe it's still for sale. Maybe it's not anymore. Maybe it worked. But instead of like using like a regular sign, they have like those little like put in the grass, like for sale by owner, and you can barely read the phone.
Yeah, don't do that.
And like it's definitely a way, but like my mind immediately goes to what's wrong,
Totally. Like why aren't you
it's
listing?
a red flag. Like why aren't you listing? Like why is the sign like that? They don't look good.
Yep.
And it like turns my mind off to the home.
For sure. Well, and I tell my sellers too, I say, hey, if you want to sell for sale by owner, go for it. Like I really do want my clients to make as much money as they can. And if they can do that without me, great. But I say, if you're going to do it well. Like make a graphic, print a real for sale sign.
Right.
Get
invest
the post.
In it.
Yeah, invest, because how you present is how someone will perceive it. Exactly like you said.
Yeah.
So I agree that it just never goes well.
No, for sure. Well, now being in 2024, do you feel like, I was curious about this. Like, do you feel like this year, and maybe with like housing prices and all that kind of stuff, has it been harder? Like, I know from like maybe a buyer's perspective, like mine, it's like, oh man, this has like slowed me down in looking at a different house. But has it been like difficult for you guys, like selling homes, or is it just like, what's that like?
It's been a very interesting 4 years.
Yeah.
It has been quite a journey. I mean, with 2020, we all didn't know what would happen. And then what did happen was real estate boomed.
Yeah.
Which, thank goodness, because that obviously really helped the economy. People continue to pour in when there was a lot of fear in the air, of course, with the pandemic. But then 2020 was huge. and they thought that was big. And then 2021 was even bigger.
Yeah.
And to me, 2021 got a little scary. The amount of money people would pay for homes and not even flinch. They would waive inspections. No one did inspections in 2021, like hardly ever, which is insane.
Yeah.
They would waive appraisal. They would pay $40,000 over list price. And
I think that's what happened to our home. I'm trying to remember now, but I feel like that kind of stuff.
It was like no one, and it just made me nervous. Like I know the buyers had to do it, and the interest rates being so low was the charge for that.
Yeah.
They said, okay, I know I'm overpaying and I'm being a little risky, but this rate is like so unbelievable. It's free money. I can't not. But it just got a little dicey. And we have investments too. And so I was like, ooh, this is fun for me as a job, but this isn't fun for me as owning property.
Yeah.
And so 2022 chilled out a little bit. And then 2023 chilled out a little bit. But this year was very challenging. It's been a very challenging year because this year, rates started to go up last year, but this year has been a whole new journey, 6-7%, 7.4, just numbers that we haven't seen. It's interesting because, if you talk to people that are in their 50s or their 60s, they're like, my first house, I had a 17% interest rate, which is true. But also they were buying houses for $40,000. So, it's just how the market plays. So this year has been challenging because there's just so much supply, and it's not that there's no demand. People want to buy houses. They just can't afford houses. It's just hard. So going into this next year, especially now that the election's over, usually rates go down after any election. Doesn't matter who wins. They always want to drop rates so people, just want to reinvest.
Good.
It's just like a fresh start for everybody.
It's crazy.
And so we're expecting a couple rate drops this year. But now I would say this fall has been better because it's now the new normal. Unfortunately, I think the shock of the rate jump from 3 to 6 to 7, obviously people were like, absolutely not. I'm not, I'm not buying a house. But now it's just, okay, this is what we're going to live in. So people have to move. People have to buy houses. So you just figure it out.
Yeah. It just feels like, as like somebody who's looking to like buy too, it just feels crazy. Like what's hard for me too on one side is like that, and maybe I probably don't fully understand it, that like maybe the government or the Federal Reserve could lower the rate, like especially after election. Why don't they just do it now so like more people can buy homes? Because it feels like for me, a lot of homes have been setting. There's a house around the corner. It may be Paige Wagner. It may be there's a house around the corner for me that's been setting for a while, and it's not a bad home, but I think like there's the high interest rate, and then there's also, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like also some people are maybe like really valuing their homes like kind of high.
Well, sellers are kind of butthurt because sellers had all the power for 2 years. I mean, they were king of the castle, and now it's gone. And but it's almost like no one has the power because buyers don't really have it either. Yes, they can get lower on prices, but they still can't afford houses because rates are so high.
Do you feel like sellers and like, I'm curious if this is a thing in Florida because so many people moved from New York or other places where like they expect prices like that, and maybe they're remote now, so they're getting paid New York prices, but they're living in Florida, whatever. Like, do you feel like that's still the expectation? That's why some people list their houses like really high? Because I'm looking at it like, man, for the size of home it is, and for the normal kind of size family that would live in there, this just feels like wild to me. Like that it's not like a brand new build at this price.
Have you been in that house? I know we can't go into too much detail.
No, okay. I haven't. I've heard.
It's
I've
more
had
of
friends.
A duplex.
If
that makes sense.
Gotcha.
To pay that,
I'm not doxing the house. It's more so just like an example.
It's a unique style property.
But even like on the other side of the street, if we wanted to go that way, this wasn't a Paige Wagner home, but there was a brand new build that just went for sale like around the other side of us.
I know you're talking
and
about
me and a buddy were watching it. It's like kind of smaller on a pretty busy road, and it was like $650. And we're like, no way.
Yep.
And then a week it was gone. Yeah, crazy.
New historic is also challenging in this financial because insurance has gotten more expensive in the state of Florida in the last 2 years. Insurance has kind of been impossible, to be honest. It's been like the hardest challenge for my year because I sell a lot of historic homes. And so prices are higher, and they're just much more picky on the level of where the home needs to be as far as wiring and roof and things, the expectations are higher. So that's just another expense. So when you're already at the top of your budget, I think people are leaning more towards newer construction right now than historic, which is sad because the house you're referring to is on the most picturesque street in all of Lakeland.
I love it.
I mean,
2
years ago, that wouldn't have sat more than 30 minutes. It would have been gone.
Well, I love that area too. Like that's what like, and this is actually like lead way into another question too, is like, we, like my wife and I and our family, like we love that kind of area because there's that charm to it, the like you live in the city, but it's not like the city. You know what I mean? It's like I can walk to our coffee shop and all that kind of stuff. But now looking at the market, there's a piece of us that does become a little bit more appealing to be like, okay, maybe we look at like, we drive out like down south a little bit or, God forbid, like north a little bit or whatever to like look at a house that's a little newer build and they tend to be a little bit less expensive.
There seems to be a trend of people going from urban to suburban like every 20 years. Like in the 90s when you grew up in the 90s and I grew up in the 90s, suburbia was everything. Nobody lived in historic homes like outside of a city. Everyone wanted their white picket fence. They wanted their land and, they wanted their little refuge. Yeah. And it's funny because I feel like our generation really wants, probably because we grew up in the internet boom, that we want the connection of people.
Right.
And so we're drawn to those type of neighborhoods where people have front porches and you say hi to your neighbor and you have community and you walk to your coffee shop.
For sure.
But of course, as those houses become more expensive, because now everybody wants it, people move
it's like a
back
mind shift.
to suburban, to suburbia and suburban neighborhoods. So I feel like it's always shifting. And then as suburban, builds again, historic's going to fall in disarray and then they're going to be cheaper and people are going to move there. So it's just always a shift.
It's like a pivot back and forth. Like, and I was like, going into that last point as well, like, is that I see you guys have like expanded too into like some other areas that are kind of like outside. Like, is that kind of was that a little bit strategic too of like, hey, with like, totally. Maybe the way this is going, moving some south too. Yeah,
we opened our second office this year in Bartow. And Bartow is a neighboring city of Lakeland. And I think for me, Bartow it's like a little sister city to Lakeland to me, especially in the historic home neighborhoods. And so as Lakeland has grown so expensive in its historic homes, you can get a home for 30% less, same size in Bartow. And it's 15 minutes down the road. Yeah. So, as Lakeland just becomes a little less accessible to everybody, I like the idea of having a location in another city that has similar amenities, much smaller. But some people like small and they like being a part of growth. Yeah. So.
And they don't mind the travel too. No. I feel like we have friends who just closed on a house today in that area, right?
Yeah.
And they don't mind the drive back and forth.
Yep. It's not that bad for how much you're saving.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is next? Like, if you could like guess of like, what does it look like for 2025? Do you feel like it stays a lot of the same?
I think it's going to stay pretty much the same. I mean, I would love to see the highest rate be 6% and then people that have, a little bit better of credit or more savings be in the 5s. That would be amazing. But also I think that's where we're going to live. The problem with the perspective of people right now, which I get, is they're just waiting for it to be 3% again. That is never going to happen. Yeah. That's done. So, okay, if we're at 7.4 as an average, I think 6 is kind of where we're going to be forever. So we're really only I think a point and a half off from just the future.
It's crazy. I have a mentor. We both know him too, but he has a bunch of investment properties for like the church, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember him telling me when we were like moving, looking at houses, maybe renting ours out, he was like, the rate you have right now will never happen again. And this was before it all changed. Yeah. And I was like, all right, we'll see. Yeah. And he was like, so right too. Yeah. I wish I could go back and like have held on to that house to rent it out or whatever.
And that's the seller. It's funny because when people think about selling, that when they bought in those years, they don't want to because of the rate. They're like, we'd rather just be in our house, which is smart. Really, be in your house as long as you can be in your house. Like, as long as you can live there, that's just the smartest play. But yeah, these rates are like gold. And unfortunately, a new buyer can't assume it. So they used to have assumable mortgages.
Yeah.
But when the market crashed in 08,
Maybe, yeah.
they took it away. So that is sad because that could have been a really good negotiation tool because you would buy a house that's maybe $25,000 over your budget if the rate was 3%.
For
You know,
sure.
if
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
assume that mortgage, it's like no brainer.
Because it might just like even out for you. Like,
Absolutely. Over the course of 5 to 10 years, it would even out.
Yeah.
So yeah, but people we just need time to just forget.
For sure. Yeah. That's the struggle for us is like we have a rental like back where we lived before this, like in Pennsylvania, and we have that low rate. And it's like the reality is we'll probably end up selling it, which is the hard part. It's like, man, that rate is so good. It just feels like it's never going to happen again.
Yep.
But like to be able to actually like invest it into here,
Totally.
which is the ultimate goal. Cause like we love this city. We
gotta
love what
do
we're
it.
doing.
Yeah.
It's,
We sold our house this year with a 3% interest rate, and it was really sad.
Yeah.
But
It's a tough
But
pill
I'd
to
rather
swallow.
be in my new house. Yeah, it's just how it goes.
For sure. Well, is there anything else that's like coming down the pike for you guys there at Paige Wagner Homes? There are like new goals or new initiatives or anything like that, or just keep selling homes?
Great question.
Yeah.
Our team's grown a lot, which is exciting. When I started the company, I always wanted quality, not quantity. And so in real estate, it's interesting because my realtors, so I'm the broker, my realtors, they're not W-2, they're like 1099 employees. So technically, like I'm not their boss. Like I can't require them to be anywhere. I can't, do things. So why I say all that is a broker can easily have like 40 realtors in a day.
Sure.
You can just onboard as many as you want kind of thing. At the right, price that you give them. But I always wanted the right people. So, I've had my brokerage for 6 years. And so we are now at 15 people, which is really big for me. But they're the right people and the culture's right. And I feel like what you said, what we're building hopefully is reflected within all of them as much as possible. So I think this year we're really looking just to continue to solidify our team. And as we grow to keep culture. We are thinking about some events this year.
Yeah.
We were very event heavy. Prior to the pandemic, we did a lot of historic home tours. I don't know if you ever went on
Those
our
were
home
awesome.
tours.
Yeah.
I feel like that really also birthed the company. It like took it to a new level, really showcased what I love about homes and why people should love them too.
Yeah.
And we would open like 6 homes a year for different people to walk through. And then we did a documentary and then we put out a book. And so I've kind of been like a little bit exhausted. I'm fulfilled. I've loved those projects and they were an amazing experience, but just kind of taken a year because the book just came out last year. So this is a year of just breathing and figuring out what is our next venture.
And for those listening too that maybe aren't aware, the documentary is the people who live there, right?
Yep.
Where can they find that if they wanted to watch it?
They can watch it on Amazon Prime.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the book, can they find that online too?
Yeah. So you can purchase the book on Amazon.
Oh, sick. There we go.
If you live
Way
in
to go,
Lakeland
Amazon.
though,
Yeah.
go buy it at like Scout and Tag or Hillcrest or
For sure.
June Taylor. Or,
Yeah.
We have it in a lot of stores
Which-
all around town locally.
They're both awesome. The book is so cool. I remember like running down there and buying it from you and like reading through it in that day. There's so much stuff. Like,
The book was
yeah.
The book was really, okay, so the documentary was a blast.
Yeah.
That was an amazing project. That really was birthed out of we couldn't do home tours anymore because the pandemic hit. And I said, well, we've done like 5 in a row. I don't want to lose momentum.
You got to do something.
Let's do something. Let's open up homes on film. Film is the one thing we can control in a pandemic. We can delay airing it. We can do it online. Nothing can shut it down in the season of everything being shut down. And so that was great. But the book, I just felt like the people who live there brand wasn't done.
Yeah.
And I wanted a physical after the film. I wanted something you could hold and touch. And the book is great because we really could go into a lot more Lakeland history, not just historic homes. And, the film is more about people. This is more about Lakeland.
Yeah. And that's what I love about it too. Like there's so much stuff in there that I didn't know. And if you're listening to this and you're like, not from Lakeland, but even if you're just super into history, I think the book is so cool because like you realize Florida's not that old. You know what I mean? Like as far as being like settled and like people living here, like the beach that was around like Hollingsworth isn't that long ago. People hanging out and swimming in there.
I mean, Blinky the alligator just passed away not too long ago.
That's crazy.
I know. Yeah. Lakeland has a lot of rich, quirky, funky history. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I always do this kind of at the end with like 1 more minute left. Is there anything that you'd want to leave people that are listening, just as like a word of encouragement, or and also maybe a way to find Paige Wagner Homes and how to keep up to date with you guys before we head out?
Sure, of course. We decorated for Christmas this past week. I
Yeah.
don't know if this episode will come out prior to Christmas, maybe.
It will come out prior to Christmas, and yeah, we decorated like 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
Crazy.
so Merry Christmas, everybody. But it was funny, as we were, done putting up our tree and decorating, I just kind of was reminded how much the physical space of your home really affects not just your mood, but your inspiration, your creativity. When something really reflects you, you just feel better.
Yeah.
And so I would say my charge, or my last, thing I want to leave to people is, whether you just rent a home, whether you live in your mom's house, whether you're in your first house, just make it reflect you. Whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be huge, expensive changes. It can be, if you want to paint that wall green, paint it green. Whatever makes you happy. I just think when your space reflects you, that's just really important for our mental and our own, kind of our lifestyle. So do that. That's what I would say.
I love that. Well, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.